told to me by my uncle just 2 days ago, when I was visiting him at his home for Christmas in rural, almost bluegrass country. I'm an occasional The Truth Is Here reader, and as a city slicker, I was curious to ask my uncle and 2 cousins, all avid outdoorsmen and ex-military, if they had ever seen anything spooky or that they couldn't explain logically while out in the woods fishing, hunting, hiking, screwing around, etc. As for my cousins, disappointingly, neither of them had any spooky stories. They told me about being startled or creeped out a few times by the calls of vixens and mountain lions, but nothing unexplained. My uncle agreed, nothing unexplained. But he did have a really creepy story to contribute that I thought belonged here. While I'm positive I won't be able to tell it anywhere near as well as my uncle did, he's a fantastic storyteller. I'll do my best. Furthermore, I want to be clear that this is a true story, and while my uncle is delightful to listen to, he is not known to exaggerate or lie. He has lived a life interesting enough that he has no reason to. I'll tell it in the first person, but remember, this is coming from my uncle, who's in his late 60s. In late winter, maybe spring 1968, it was my last semester at the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado, on my way to Vietnam as fast as I could get there. By that point, I was getting bored, and I was really looking forward to graduating. And I really took advantage of the increased leash we got as near graduates. A couple of times a week, I would drive up to a spot I found by the Snake River and fish for a few hours in the afternoons. One Wednesday, I got to the spot around 2, parked the Jeep pretty close to the bank and got to fly fishing. A few hours went by and I had caught a couple of dinky cutthroats. So I built myself a fire on the riverbank to cook them up for supper before rolling back to school by 9. I was sitting there by the fire, finishing up my second trout. Except for the river, it was quiet. I was by myself. I didn't see anything unusual. But this feeling of dread started to settle in. Like something was wrong, or something bad was about to happen. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but I felt almost sick to my stomach. I decided to stay alert and see if the feeling would pass. If it didn't, I knew I had a little .38 revolver on the passenger seat of the Jeep. Just in case. A fishing gun, you know. I kept picking at my trout, mostly listening for anything moving in the trees. A few minutes went by and the sick feeling was sticking around. In fact, it got worse. I thought maybe I sensed a cat stalking a whitetail. They had mountain lions up there, and those bastards were dead silent on their feet. So I knew just because I didn't hear or see anything, didn't mean it wasn't there. I got up, slowly, casually, got the .38 out of the Jeep and loaded it. I sat back down by the fire and put the .38 on my lap. I finished my trout and hustled to pack up. And I finally got myself out of there. 2 days later, Friday, I went back up to that spot to get some fishing in around noontime. I fished for hours. I think I caught 3 cutthroat that day. I was on the riverbank already frying up the fish when a game warden pulled up. I thought, oh no, they've got me now. You see, I hadn't bought a license. I was going to be graduating and leaving, and I just didn't bother getting one. Now here's a game warden about to ask for my license, and I don't have one. I thought maybe I could turn on the charm and he might not give me a ticket, or let me go with a warning. He parked behind my Jeep and walked over. I said, "Hey there, we've got a cutthroat here. Would you like to join us?" "Don't mind if I do." I chatted him up, but I think he could tell I was tense. I thought things were going well. "He's here, and he's eating the evidence. Are you from around here?" he asked. "No sir, upstate Buffalo, New York. I'm down at the academy, graduating in May." "Do you mind if I take a look at your ID?" "Sure can," I said, and I handed him my student ID card. He handed it back. He looked out over the river and looked back at me and said, "You get up here much?" "Sure, whenever I can. I've been up here a couple days a week for a while. I was up here on Wednesday." His eyes sort of sharpened up and he frowned looking at me. "Wednesday? Same spot?" "Yes, sir, same spot. I've gotten lucky with the cutthroat here." "Say, around what time do you think?" he asked. "Oh, I was here a while. I left around 4 or 5. I creeped myself out. Tell you the truth, I kinda booked out of here. 4 or 5, you say. Did you notice anything funny? See anything strange?" "No, sir, I didn't see anything, but I got a bad feeling and I had to run." He goes on to tell me right around 6 o'clock on Wednesday, a game warden right on the other side of the river from where we were sitting had found a dead body, freshly dead. They reckoned it had just happened. The man's ankles were bound and his hands were tied behind his back, and he was shot through the back of the head. He was bent like he was on his knees, like somebody executed him. I never heard what happened after that, or what the outcome of that was. But this being 1968 outside Colorado Springs, I think that was an early drug trafficking hit. I think that was when people first started bringing large quantities of drugs through that area. So that's the story I've settled on after all these years. I think I must have heard or seen something that tipped me off, and I must have somehow perceived it when the body was being dumped. I didn't see anything that jumped out, but I think I must have felt it in my subconscious. I suspect that if I hadn't taken out that .38 and set it on my lap, something bad would have happened to me. Now, I always buy a fishing license. I don't know if you've ever been to Chesterfield, England, but if you have, you'll know it's one of those typical towns in the countryside. It's big enough for there to still be strangers. It's small enough that you'll always run into people you know, no matter where you're going. It's a market town where the majority of stalls are out in the open, covered with canopies and plenty of tourists in the warmer months, because of our famous twisted church spire and traditional celebrations. If you're from the area, you grow up being pretty lax about talking to strangers because not much ever happens here. Like I said, just one of those typical countryside towns. There's one main college in town which pretty much every resident attends at some point or another. It's pretty close to the center, so one day when I was 17, after my morning lessons, I walked into town to enjoy my afternoon off. I generally wandered around, not really paying attention to much. It was warm and I had nowhere to be. Plus I had to buy a birthday present for one of my closest friends, so it seemed like the perfect opportunity to look at what was on offer around the market. After an hour or so, of not really finding anything that would appeal to her, I started to head towards my bus stop, figuring I'd spend the rest of the afternoon on Amazon or something, present hunting. Opposite my bus stop is this little street, lane, between shops leading down the main marketplace. It's wide enough to fit a car down, but it always has a couple of extra stalls, one of which was a jewelry stall that was always filled with pretty tacky things. My bus wasn't at its stop yet, so it seemed silly not to have a look to fill the time. As I got to the stall, there was a man chatting with the owner. He was a tall, Asian-looking man in his mid-20s with a strange accent. He certainly stuck out in this incredibly white, fairly rural town. But I figured he was just one of the tourists I mentioned before. As I looked down at some of the necklaces, the owner turned his attention away from this man to greet me, and the usual, "If you find something you like, just call me" routine. There were a couple of cute items, so I started performing a mental checklist of what sort of things my friend would like, so I could pick out the most appealing. Suddenly, a tall Asian guy turns and grins at me. I look up and smile at him, thinking he's just being polite until he starts introducing himself, asking me my name, etc. They were all fairly innocent questions, the kind you'd ask if you were still learning a language and wanted to practice. So I start chatting, not giving overly complicated answers, but apparently enough to make this guy keep asking more. Suddenly the questions went from, do you have any pets? I have 2 cats, etc. to more complex ones. He started asking me where I was going next, and what I was doing with the rest of my day. I told him I was going to go visit the school my mum works at, hoping he'd leave it at that. He started asking me where my mum worked, how far away it was, could he come with me, etc. The owner of the stall caught my eye and subtly shook his head, indicating I should very swiftly remove myself from this situation. I gave the strange man some false answers, naming another local school, telling him it was in a different direction and explaining he couldn't come with me. I then apologized that I had to go now. I just spotted my bus pulling up and didn't want to miss it. It wasn't my bus, it was another random one, but I decided saying I had to get the bus and then hiding behind the crowd meant I could leave without him following. Wrong. He started following me to the bus stop, saying things like he loved me and wanted to marry me. He kept grabbing my arm and trying to make me look at him, yanking me backwards. I wriggled away and sped up my pace. We were still in a very public area, so I knew there were plenty of people around to step in if I shouted. When I got to the stop, I quickly pulled myself into the queue and stood a little too closely to the woman in front. She turned to look at me and saw the strange man stood only a couple of meters away, shouted things like, I love you, Nem. I'll see you again soon. The woman smiled a little awkwardly, saying he seemed sweet, and asked how long we'd been together. I quickly explained I'd only just met him and he was following me. I explained I was just getting on this bus to escape him, and that I was freaked out, but was trying not to show it. Her face lit up as she put her arms around me, exclaiming, Almost didn't recognize you for a second. How have you been, love? Before starting to chatter away about all these fictional family members of mine she'd seen recently, and asking how X, Y, and Z were until we got on the bus. The guy must have gotten the hint as he stepped further away but continued to watch. The woman let me sit next to her on the bus and told me not to look out the window at him, but said she could see him watching the bus pull down the road until it was out of sight. She asked me the general direction I was heading in and advised me the best stop to get off at, even though the stop was a mile away from my home, and I was very unfit at the time. I sprinted all the way home and locked the door as soon as I got in. I hid under my duvet and instantly burst into tears. My friends had to walk me to my bus stop for the next month after that, since it was so close to the jewelry store. I couldn't bear to go there on my own in case he showed up. I'm really grateful for the owner of the jewelry stand for telling me it was time to leave, as I already suspected, and for the woman at the bus stop who helped me out and made sure I got away from him safely. This was 5 years ago, and it still scares me what might have happened had they not stepped in. Strange guy at the jewelry stand. Once was enough. Let's not meet again. I didn't think I'd ever revisit this, but this event changed my life and still affects me to this day. I apologize in advance for the length, but I promise all the events are relevant. It was in the 8th grade. I was a typical 13-year-old girl who loved pop music, lip gloss, and talking about boys. My best friend Tiffany and I were inseparable. We had every class together, ate lunch together, spent the night with each other every single weekend, and called each other every single day after school. We had another friend, Ashley. She was a lot more boy crazy than Tiffany and me. She was far more adventurous too. She had already had her first kiss, and she was crushing on this guy Adam. She talked about him constantly, to the point where Tiffany and I were indifferent about it. Adam was a hellion. One night at a football game, he doused his hand with Axe body spray and lit it on fire. And for a reason that escaped me, Ashley was infatuated with him. He wasn't great looking, so I think she was attracted to his bad boy demeanor. The four of us were in concert band together. Now this was the era of MySpace, Zanga, Angelfire, the old school social sites. I had an account on each site and spent a lot of time online. Harmless stuff that my parents knew about and approved of. During football season, after every home game, my school would host a dance that we would call a sock hop. At one dance, Tiffany introduced me to a friend that she had met online, Tyler. He didn't go to our school, so he had to have snuck in. He had a sense of humor that was a bit too dark for my taste, but I thought he was an all-round nice guy. At the end of the dance, Tyler asked me for my phone number. Not in a crushing on me kind of way, but in more of a we should keep in touch kind of way. I obliged and the night ended. Tyler would occasionally text me a harmless, "What up, girl?" and we'd exchange small talks via text once every couple of weeks. Tiffany, however, talked to him non-stop. She developed a crush on him and stopped calling me after school. We started going to the mall without inviting me, and it led to the two of us drifting apart. With Tiffany and Ashley chasing boys, I was all alone. I was doing my own thing at school. I still saw Tiffany and Ashley every day, but things just weren't the same between us. One morning before the first bell, I was walking to my locker. I met up with Tiffany since her locker was right beside mine. We were exchanging awkward small talk when I saw a hand poke Tiffany's shoulder. We both turned around and saw Ashley, wide-eyed with delight. I was intrigued. Was she about to divulge a juicy story about a boy? She smiled and said, "Look what I've got," and unzipped her small purse. I peeked into it to see about 10 white oval-shaped pills. I had never seen drugs in person before, so I was obviously taken aback. "Where'd you get those? What are they?" I exclaimed. She grinned and replied, "Adam gave them to me. I'm going to take them after first period." "No," I angrily responded. "Ashley, you can't. You don't know what these are. You have to get rid of them right now." She scoffed and smirked. "Shut the fuck up. Adam said I'll be fine." The first period bell rang and she strutted off, satisfied with herself. I was in shock. I asked Tiff, "What are we going to do? She can't take those." To my surprise, Tiffany didn't even seem slightly concerned. She started walking to class, and I followed, nauseous with worry for Ashley. The first half of the day was a blur because I couldn't focus. I was sick with worry. Before I knew it, it was time for lunch. I took a tray and sat down at an empty lunch table. I was half-heartedly stirring at my mashed potatoes when I heard an outburst from the hallway behind me, then loud sobbing and screaming. "What the?" I thought as I turned around and saw Ashley on her knees bawling. Before I could process much else, 3 of my concert band friends saw me, bolted to my table and sat down. They told me that Adam was taken out of class on a stretcher and was on the way to the hospital. He had had a seizure due to a drug overdose. Instantly, I felt my stomach in my throat. All I could think about was Ashley. I looked back into the hallway and she was being escorted to the bathroom by a female teacher. Everyone at my table started crying and I joined in, absolutely dumbstruck with what was unfolding. I didn't eat a bite of food. Lunch period came and went. The next class was concert band, so I made my way to the band building behind the school. I found a seat in the back of the room. My teacher wasn't in there yet, and kids slowly poured in, somber and sad. Was Adam dead? Did Ashley take those damn pills? My mind was going 1,000 miles an hour. I saw Tiff walk in, but she didn't see me. She sat alone at the front of the room. I anxiously waited for Ashley to walk in. She never showed. About 10 minutes later, my teacher, another teacher, and 2 police officers walked in. The 4 men stood at the front of the room, in front of the instrument closet. As some of you may have heard, began one officer. There has been an incident involving several students. Several, I gulped to myself. Now, one student has been treated at the hospital right now, and he has informed us that he supplied some powerful pills to about a dozen other students. My heart sank. What the actual fuck was happening right now? We need your help and your cooperation. If you know of anyone, we mean anyone, who may be holding or using these pills, we need to know about it. Please, you could be saving a life. The other officer added. If you'd like to help us, please come to the front of the class, and Officer Smith will talk to you in the instrument closet. Ashley raced through my mind. She wasn't in class, so I wasn't sure if she was okay or if she was passed out on the bathroom floor. I saw 3 kids start slowly standing up and shuffling their way to the front of the class. One at a time, they were taken into the closet and the door closed behind them. After about 2 minutes, the door would open, the kid would walk out, defeated, and sit back down. The whole time I was terrified. I didn't want to get Ashley in trouble, but more importantly, I didn't want her to get hurt. Ultimately, I decided that a mad Ashley was better than a dead Ashley. I stood up and made my way to the closet. I told him everything and started sobbing immediately. When the door opened, I had to walk all the way to the back of the class while crying like a baby. Of course, everyone noticed. I looked at Tiffany, and her eyes met mine with a knowing leer. I didn't have to utter a word. She knew what I had done. As it turns out, Ashley and the other 12 students who had the pills in their possession were expelled for the remainder of the school year. This was in November, so that was the majority of the school year. I tried calling Ashley to check on her, but she ignored me. I have no doubt that Tiffany told her that I ratted her out. I never found out if she took the pills, but mad at me or not, I was glad she was alive and safe. This is where shit starts hitting the fan. Over Christmas break, I spent a lot of time online because it was too yucky outside to go anywhere. The old drug bust was behind me, but I was left with an empty feeling because I hadn't heard from Ashley, and Tiffany stopped talking to me nearly altogether. One morning I logged onto my Zanga account, and to my surprise, my inbox was swamped with private messages and comments. I thought it was due to not logging in for a couple of weeks, so I excitedly opened my inbox. What I saw floored me. Every message was filled with the most foul, hateful threats I'd ever seen. I know what you did, bitch. You fucking slut, fucking narc. I'm gonna kill you, stupid cunt. Your family is gonna die because you're a nasty slut. What the hell, you nasty whore? Everyone hates you because of what you did. I felt like throwing up. Every message in my inbox was like this, about 30 in total. The comments were just as bad, except they were posted on my public page and everyone could read them. I read the username, Deathtrap69. I didn't know who this was. Disgusted, I clicked on the name to reveal the profile. The photo was of a guy in heavy eyeliner, and his pierced tongue was sticking out. What the hell was this? I clicked on his photo album to find a better photo to identify this person. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was Tyler. The guy from the sock hop that Tiffany had met online. Immediately I knew that Tiffany had turned on me. I couldn't believe what was happening. I turned off the computer and cried for hours. I didn't sleep much that night. About a week passed before I gathered the courage to go online again. I reluctantly logged into my Xanga account, and it had gotten worse. Over 50 comments and messages, all of them just as vicious, and every message contained 2 links at the end. Xanga.com, LNM please as a slut, Xanga.com, LNM please will die soon. Horrified beyond belief, I clicked on the first link. The page was black with red text, and the headline was spinning. LNM please is a fucking slut. Through teary eyes, I looked at the profile picture. It was a photo of me, making a goofy face, sitting at the lunch table in school. There's only one person who knew about this photo because she took the photo on her phone. Tiffany. All suspicions I had were made abundantly clear in that moment. She and Tyler were behind this. I then clicked on the second link. This page was even more terrifying than the first one. It said things like, LNM please is going to pay for what she did. LNM please is going to die tonight. I'm gonna kill LNM please and her whole fucking family. I know this cunt lives and I'm gonna stab her brother. I'm gonna slit her throat and laugh as she bleeds to death. I'm gonna stab her in the heart in her sleep. She's a rotten cunt and deserves to fucking die. I realized the severity of the situation when I saw this page. Tiffany obviously knew where I lived because she used to spend the night with me regularly. She was pretty capable of telling Tyler where I lived. He said he was going to kill my family. That night, I threw up for hours. My parents thought I had the stomach flu. They knew about what had happened at school, but I didn't want to tell them about this. Somehow, I thought I would get in trouble. As time passed, I received these messages on my Xanga daily. Then it started on MySpace. Then I started getting emails, then text messages. Then phone calls from blocked numbers and nasty voicemails from a male voice, undoubtedly Tyler. This was all day, every day, for months. I was afraid to step outside. When spring semester started, I started getting handwritten threats in my locker. One day I found a razor blade taped to the level on my locker door. I didn't eat lunch at school because I was afraid of being poisoned. I didn't go to the bathroom at school for fear of getting jumped. I was terrified of Tiffany. I eventually caved in and told my parents. They called the police and they started an investigation. They said that they took these incessant threats very seriously. The school was informed about Tiffany's actions and she was suspended for a week. I spoke to my guidance counselor and the principal, and they moved me to all different classes and a different lunch period. The state police made a visit to my house and collected my statement. I was escorted to and from the school building by my mom every day for the rest of the year. The hoopla that surrounded me was starting to get more attention at school, and people stopped talking to me altogether. I endured the rest of my 8th grade year in fearful silence. I deleted all online accounts, Zanga, MySpace, Angel Fire, and my email addresses. I got my cell phone number changed and didn't share with anyone except my mom, dad, and brother. I couldn't make my own voicemail greeting because my dad didn't want me to divulge my name and my new cell phone line. Once a week, for about 6 months, a local officer would stop by my house and check in on me and my family. Since I had no more online ties and a new phone number, the threat stopped. This incident made me much more cautious about what I share online and who I share my phone number with. Even as a grown woman, I absolutely don't give it to people I've just met. I never saw Tiffany again after 8th grade, instead of continuing on to 9th grade at the same school. I transferred to an out-of-state high school and everything slowly became normal for me again. As for Tyler, he never faced any charges. Like I said, I only met him one time. But he's still in the back of my mind whenever I am out in public. If I ever ran into him today, I'm not sure what I'd do. I haven't changed much, and since I have distinct facial features, I'm sure he'd recognize me. Hopefully he moved out of the area, and he's someone else's problem now. So, Tiffany and Tyler, let's not meet again. Edit. I forgot to add this. But for the entirety of my freshman year, while I was at a different school, Tiffany worked hard to spread the most vicious rumors about me at my former school. The worst one I can remember is that my dad liked to watch me change clothes, and I changed in front of him all the time while he pleasured himself. Once I found out all these rumors, I told Dad. He went to Tiffany's house and told her dad. All he did was ground her for a week. Oh well,